welcome back to the LaceUp with Mickey podcast. This is episode 6, and this is Albert, COO, CFO, MAG Wholesale. How you doing, Albert?
Hey, Mickey, I'm doing pretty good. The weather in South Florida is changing. We're getting a little bit of a breeze now, a little bit, but it's still hot.
It's starting to feel good.
Yeah.
Albert is LaceUp's second customer ever. I wanted to bring him in so he can shed some insight on his company, MAG Wholesale, and how he was able to build a huge wholesale car part, right? Oil, lube, all kinds of automotive.
Basically, we're in wholesale distribution. Our product base is motor oils, car chemicals. By car chemicals, I mean octane booster, brake fluid, gas treatment, Armor All. We also have some car parts, and we have general merchandise also. We have approximately right now, last time I took a count, was about 6,000 items. 6,000 items.
And take us back to the beginning, right? How did MAG Wholesale get started, and how did it get to be what it is today?
Well, I happen to be Cuban American. My parents, my mother's deceased, my father's still alive. My parents came to this country in 1966 through the freedom flights. They were able to leave. Basically, my father and my mother didn't agree with Fidel Castro's type of government. They got disillusioned with the government, and they immigrated to the United States, which to me it's one of the greatest countries in the world, and the immigrant dream. Usually immigrants that come to this country work, and they work hard. And basically, my dad came to this country. My dad and my mother came to this country with 2 children that were basically under 5 years of age, no language skills. Just imagine this, you come to this country with 2 children. You gotta feed them. They're under 5 years old. They have no language skills. They come with no money. Because people don't understand, but when you left Cuba, there was only 2 things you could basically leave with. The clothes you had on you, some clothes you could bring, and your wedding bands. Fidel Castro's government will not let you take any money out of Cuba, or any jewelry if you had. You had to leave it to the government. The government was the owner. My dad worked hard, saved his money. He's still alive. He's in Europe right now with this because he remarried. He's with his wife in Europe, traveling. Saved his money, worked hard, worked smart, and he became a multimillionaire.
And okay, so he comes, he works hard. At what point did he start the business? Did he have an idea? Did he start working for another distributor? How did he come
My dad made his money out of, when he came from Cuba, he had regular type jobs. As a matter of fact, his last job was a welder because welding paid good at that time. It was a trade. He was always an entrepreneur. He started buying properties, apartment buildings. He had a private school bus service, which he started because at that time there was no private school bus service. Because the way it was, if you went on a public school bus, they would pick you and drop you off at a corner. Mm-hmm. But Hispanic parents tend to be very protective of their children. So what they wanted was for their children to be picked up and dropped off at the front of the door. And they wanted to make sure that child went into the door. They also wanted to make sure that you picked up the child. So he started a private school bus service. He was one of the first ones to do it. And he made his money that way, charging kids to take them to school and take them to school and dropping them off. Now, when you have a school bus service, this is the good part. You work in the morning and you work in the afternoons. So what do you do during the whole day, from the morning to the afternoon? He had properties he started selling auto parts out of his house, and this was in the 70s. And then about the late 70s, he bought a building, and he went to a store and he says, what's a product? What is a product that I see in a convenience store? What's a product that I see in a grocery store? What's a product that I see in a gas station? What's a product that I see in an auto parts? What's a product that I see basically in any retail establishment? Since he was selling auto parts, he bought a truckload of motor oil. Because if you go into a convenience store, you see motor oil. If you go into a grocery store, you see motor oil. If you go into a gas station, you see motor oil. If you go into a pharmacy discount, around that time there wasn't almost pharmacy discount stores were private. A lot of Walgreens or CVS didn't exist and all that. And he bought his first truckload of motor oil.
Did he know anything about the business, or he just saw the demand and went and bought the truck?
He was selling parts. He was selling parts already, and he saw the demand. And my brother, which at that time was like 20 years old, started working with him, and they started selling products out on the street.
Cold calling customers?
And we've been open ever since. No.
Or just the same customers you selling the auto parts to?
Getting in his car and visiting them and selling to them.
Wow.
And basically, we've been open ever since. Our annual revenue is about $20 million a year. This is a family business.
Mm-hmm.
$20 million a year. Basically, our products, we have like 10 trucks. We basically have 11 now, but 10 trucks that go from anybody that knows the South Florida area. We go from Florida City all the way to West Palm Beach. Florida City is before you start getting into the Keys.
Mm-hmm.
We distribute those products to gas stations, mechanics, grocery stores, convenience stores, pharmacy discounts, dollar stores. You know, in the South Florida area, since South Florida has a big immigrant community. I mean, if you want to see people from everywhere, just move to South Florida. It makes it exciting, you know. I mean, I guess it's like New York City. It has a lot of independent businesses. Because you're immigrants, a lot of immigrants tend to open up their own businesses. And we distribute, like I said, about 6,000 products. It's next day delivery. We also export a lot of merchandise.
And real quick, the business, where it is today though, a big piece of that puzzle is you, right? So where along the story did you get groomed to come in and be CEO and CFO? What's that story for you to come in and take charge of the business? Talk to me about that.
Well, when I came into business, it was already established.
Mm-hmm.
I think the business, when I came in, we were doing about 5-6 million a year. At that time, the reason I couldn't go and start with my brother and my father at the time, because at that time I was working for a company called Southern Bell,
Mm-hmm.
which then turned into Bell South, which then turned to AT&T, and I was making good money. And my father couldn't pay me what I was making in AT&T. So I wanted a change in my life too. You know, I wanted to learn more things, because, you know, the more you learn, the more value you have as an employee. So I had to take a cut in pay, which wasn't that drastic, but I had to take a cut in pay, and I started working in MAG Wholesale in 1992.
Now, did you see the potential when, I mean, obviously you had ambitions of making more money than you were making at the other job, right? Or was it just because you needed a change? What was your primary motivation for doing it?
Primary motivation was, I would say, you know, I understand where a lot of people, even when a lot of people that have money say it's not all about the money, you know, and believe it or not, I agree with them sometimes. It was a 50% and a 50%. It was 50% about the money, and it was 50% that I wanted to learn more. You know, I wanted to learn more about the business. You know, Mickey, you know this as much as I do. If there's any way you want to learn about a business, put a business, because you have to learn about everything. Even if you have to unclog the toilet, you know, because, you know, you learn about everything. So it was 50% more money. But remember, I took a cut in pay too. So, and 50% that I wanted to learn.
Okay, so 1992, you come on board, and at that point in time, what was the journey between then and, you know, obviously your dad probably didn't give you the reins.
We weren't even computerized in 1992. Nothing. No. They were doing invoices on paper with pen. So the first thing when I started working with MAG Wholesale was to buy a computer program. So I went around and I bought a program that I looked at 3 programs, and one was Unix based, which at that time in the early 90s didn't interest me. Another one was RPG. And remember, I'm buying the hardware and the software.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm buying both things. I'm not just buying because we were doing it on paper.
All the accounting was on paper.
Yes.
You're
We were just, the only thing that was computerized, that was being done was statements.
Okay.
That was it, as your statements and accounts receivable. And the third program was one which was, I've been lucky that I've made the wise choices always in buying software. And that's why I bought LaceUp too, because it was a wise choice. But I bought one that's called SBT.
Yeah.
Okay, very simple. A lot of people work it. I'm glad I did buy that one, because it was a lot of people supported that program. We used it for many years, and personally right now we're using Sage Pro ERP.
Okay, so you went to Sage Pro, and once you digitized, so you said you were doing about 5 million. I mean, once you made everything digital, did it help the business? What was the impact?
Oh, of course. Nowadays, to run a successful business, you have to be as much as you can computerized. You have. There's no way. I'll give you a perfect. I'll give you a perfect example. In South Florida, everybody knows in South Florida, especially people that live in South Florida, we've had a lot of hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
We had a hurricane, I think it was called Wilma, in 2007. I didn't have a generator. It's to run the computers. There is no way you could put 6,000 different items on a paper invoice and sell it. You know, you just can't. It's just no way. I had to shut the business down like for 2 weeks because we didn't have electricity down. We didn't have electricity for 2 weeks. But nowadays, if you want to run a successful business, you have to be as much as you can computerized.
So, okay, so you computerize, you get an accounting system, which was back then something super advanced, because even today, believe it or not, there's people that don't do accounting systems. They're still doing everything behind. Guys, mom and pop shops, 2 and 3 drivers, still everything by hand. Even their books completely done by hand, receivables by hand, and I'm like, are you guys crazy? Or Excel? It's lunacy. But anyways, you get this accounting system. Now I want you to share the story. In between those years in the early 2000s, my uncle comes and knocks on your door, right? He had started LaceUp. I believe you end up becoming a second customer, but talk to me about that interaction the first time. Do you remember it?
Well, I remember he at that time I used to take a lot of calls, people selling me stuff.
Yeah.
Now I don't, because every day I get a couple of calls, people that want to sell me everything from shares of oil stocks in Texas to diamonds in Africa. So I was lucky to take that call, and I have this policy where I never turn a salesperson away. I never turn them away. I give them a chance to, at least I listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I'm interested, because I'm not interested to buy diamonds in Africa, or I'm not interested. I have this policy where, because I used to be a salesperson too, and I know it's really hard, people just slamming the door on you, and you don't give them an opportunity, you know, to at least say 2 minutes. So Michelle calls me, and he said he had a program where my salespeople could you know, get orders on iPad. At that time, they were only working with iPads, Apple PDAs. No, excuse me. No, we weren't. It was just regular PDAs. We were just working with regular PDAs and take orders. I was really interested because if anybody knows SBT, because most of the people that are probably going to listen to this podcast are mostly interested in technology, but a lot of people know that SBT price lists, you had to print them, and we had dot matrix printers at that time. Mm-hmm. So a price list in SBT with all the items I have was about this thick. At that time, I probably had like 4,000 items, or about this thick.
Yeah, and for those of you listening, about 1.5 inches to 2 inches worth of paper regarding thickness with all the items to print.
Now you got 10 items? 10 items? I mean, excuse me, you got 10 salespeople, you got to print them 10 lists. Not that alone. You have to print the list every month. So you basically have to print a stack this big for the salespeople every month. That's what I was mostly interested in about this. Why price changes? We're adding new products constantly. Products are being dropped and new products being added on. It's a constant thing. So I was mostly interested about the having their prices there. Well, it started that way. At that time we were using PDAs.
Well, he came and sold you the PDAs, or you had some in place already?
No, we bought them, and he sold us the software.
He sold you the software. Was it easy to sell you on it, or did you slam the door in his face? How was the interaction?
It was easy. It was easy for him to sell me on it for a lot of reasons. I needed it.
Mm-hmm.
He was cold calling people, and he found an opportunity. And at that time, spending money, I was more liberal in spending money, you know, on technology. Now my dad has me a little bit, you know, he has me a little bit under control. But I needed it. The product worked.
Did you know you were a second customer?
I think so. He told me. I think he told me.
So what did you do when he had problems? Because I know Ignacio and him, you were always on him for a little while until everything was up and running, right?
Let's say this.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get problems installing a system, especially a system that's customized to what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But Michelle and Ignacio always fix the problems. You know, if I got angry sometimes, besides they're friends of mine too, you know, if I got angry at them, I may have said some cuss words in Spanish and all that, but they always fix the problems. you got to understand, if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't have been with them still. I mean, they sold me the program, they sold me the software, I think in the late 90s, and it's been already, what, 19, 20 years?
That's crazy.
All my problems have been solved.
That's incredible. Okay, so you start implementing these technologies, right? How did you scale? I mean, talk to me. I don't know if there's a secret. Talk to me about the formula to get a company from 5 and then you 4 or 5x the size. What did you do? Like, what was the game plan to get it to grow like that?
Well, there was no game plan. There was no game plan. Basically, if a company's growing, you have to keep on growing. Let it grow. I mean, there's only 2 ways a company could go. It could go down, or it could go up. And you don't really want it to be in the middle. Mm-mm. If it's in the middle, you want it to go up. You know, basically, it's letting it grow, and when there's problems, fixing the problems, because when a problem is small, it's easy to fix. It's when you let a problem get big, then it's harder to fix. You know, and in all honesty, we grew slow. Mm-hmm. We didn't grow. We didn't. You know, there's companies that grow a lot quicker, and basically, the only suggestion I have is that if you have a small problem, take care of it now, because it'll get bigger if you don't.
Absolutely. So as you're growing, especially in our business, like maybe you pick up a big account, and that account accounts for a lot of your business or something like that, and something happens along the way where things start going south a little bit, right? And you have to right the ship. Otherwise, if you don't, that problem compounds and you get to the point where you might derail a little bit, right? And have a down year or maybe even go out of business. So was there ever a scenario in your business where you thought, oh shit, either I fix this or we're screwed? Is there anything that came up that could have really hurt you? Like the economy crashing in 2008.
What saves MAG Wholesale is basically, I sell to a variety of businesses. I have 1,000 active customers. 50% of my sales are out of this country to the Caribbean islands, except Puerto Rico and Cuba. Cuba has an embargo, and Puerto Rico gets everything direct, and 50% of my sales are domestic. That's what saved us all the time. That we just don't depend on one customer. I mean, if you came up to me, Mickey, and you told me, hey Albert, I need some advice. Do I sell to 100 customers that are gonna give me $1 million each year? Or do I sell to one customer that's gonna give me $500 million a year? I would sell to 100 customers that are gonna give you $1 million a year. Why? How about if that customer drops you? And what are you gonna do?
You're screwed.
That's why there's actual vendors, of course. We're not talking about Procter and Gamble. We're not talking about Kraft, big vendors. But there's a lot of small vendors that won't sell to Walmart, because if they have to sell all their product to Walmart, and then Walmart tells them, we're not interested in your product anymore,
you're out of business.
You're out of business. Another problem that about business of ours has would be cash flow. Mm-hmm. I'm a wholesaler, so I gotta lend a lot of money. Have a lot of money out on the street, but everybody pays. Everybody pays because if you want to stay business, you have to pay. It's been consistent every year. And
in this market, I mean, I know I've heard some stories about the people that have worked at your company and stuff, good and bad, right? How have you found the talent to scale? Do you interview multiple people? Do you give them a chance? Do you fire fast when you don't like somebody? Like, what's your strategy to hire and fire people to scale the company?
Well, I tend to be a softie. I only usually fire for either drug use
Mm-hmm.
or theft, you know. In my business, in your business, it's harder to find talent than in my business,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because in my business, you just basically need a couple of key people. In your business, you need people that need to know what they're doing, that have brains and all that, you know. Basically, it's a lot of variables. Look, it's a lot of variables. First issue you have is, what can I pay for the job?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because maybe your company cannot pay what Microsoft is going to pay to a starting developer. So first you have a set wage where you're going to get a position, okay? And then within that set wage, you just have to find the best talent that you can. And I'm a firm believer also in cross-training people. You need to cross-train people.
Within the company, right?
Yeah, you need to cross-train people because you got somebody out, you know? Either that or you need to know everything. Now, I'm fortunate that I know every operation in a business, except how to drive a forklift, because I've never gotten on a forklift. But I know the SAGE program from A to Z. You know, from accounting, balance sheet, financials, purchase order, inventory control, sales order. I know everything, the whole program. As a matter of fact, I do the financials in-house. The only thing I don't know how to do is taxes. You know, that's for the accountant. But if you know everything, you're set. If you know everything in a business, if you yourself know every operation in the business, you're never gonna have, you know, for lack, you know, of running the business. But basically, you try to hire the best talent for what you're paying. There's the two worst things in the business is first is collecting money, because you have to collect. And it's always unfortunately you have to do it, but yes, there's times where you fire people. Believe this or not, I don't send somebody to fire someone, I fire them myself.
Okay.
I don't, you know, there's a lot of big businesses where the president won't fire the person, it'll be either HR or an assistant manager.
Yeah.
No.
How do you do it? Do you tell them what they did?
People, yes, you have to explain what they did. Yeah. And to tell you the truth, I've never had a problem with firing somebody where the person's want to beat me up or has threatened me or whatever, because they understood the reason why they were getting fired. I have a cousin that her husband owns about 5 McDonald's or 6 McDonald's. The guy has 600 employees, and he told me something one day. He goes, when you fire somebody, fire them that they love you. You know, you don't want a conflict. You give them a reason why. But yes, you need to fire somebody because a business is like the government. You have to do it for the betterment of the whole company. Like my dad says in Spanish, it's a ship.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us are in the ship, and we're trying to keep the ship afloat. And if somebody's trying to sink the ship, you have to let them go.
Okay, so we've talked about how the company's grown, staffing, right? The next question that I want to ask you is, like, when you're looking at, so it's 19, it's almost the end. We're almost headed into 2020. I mean, what do you plan for what we're going to be doing the next year? Do you lay out your goals for the business? What's like the vision? You know, how do you come up with a vision for the business and the game plan?
I do have a vision and I do have goals set for the business. I have to convince my dad on some of those goals because my dad doesn't like to spend money, you know, on he likes to keep it there in the business. But for a business to grow, you have to spend money on technology. Nowadays, you have to. And I have some ideas in mind. It's just trying to convince my father to get them done.
And how do you, I mean, in my case, you know, I work with my uncle. and we're partners. And during the day, obviously, there's disagreements because it's human nature, right? Sometimes our visions align. Other times we have to speak with one another and discuss the pros and cons of the visions, but normally we come to an agreement that's mutual, that we both agree with. In your case, I mean, how do you manage to work with your dad to convince him to do something? Like, is there give and take? How do you do it? Like, what strategies would you give to somebody that works with a parent or a...
Look, I've been working in a family business since 1992.
Mm-hmm.
There's good days and bad days. The only thing I could say for people that are in partnerships or family businesses is that always communicate. It's like a relationship.
Good or bad, right?
Yeah.
Like
okay, it's when you're in a relationship, the day that you stop speaking to your spouse is the day it's over. But if you guys are screaming at each other, at least you're communicating.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it's in business. So keep the lines of communications open all the time. Talk. If something's bothering you, don't be afraid to say it. Don't, because what happens is when you're afraid to say it, then the problem becomes bigger in the long run. Don't be say it. And well, if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. But in business, there's things like there's good things like buying out your partner.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a divorce where you have to get 50% and all that. In business, you come to an agreement. Hey, look, I don't like the way you're running this. Me and you can't seem to agree. I'll buy you out. You come to an agreement. But the main thing is keep the line of communications open. It's easier for me now because me and my brother used to come into disagreement.
Mm-hmm.
Now my father makes the final decision. So in a way, it's easier. It takes the burden off of me and him.
That's incredible in a sense, because now you don't have the stress of having to make the decision yourself. And the nice thing is, if your dad makes the wrong decision, then the onus isn't on you anymore. It's on him.
It's on him, which he's the owner.
Yeah. And
another thing for partnerships, let me tell you, there has to be set rules in place, because I'll give you a perfect example of what happens in a partnership. Let's say you're putting in $100 a week.
mm-hmm.
You're busting your butt, sacrificing yourself when you don't have time to be with your partner, with your kids and all that. And your other partner is putting in 50 hours a week. And then your partner wants to make the same amount of money you're making. Mm-hmm. So partnerships are hard. Having a family business is very hard, but partnerships are hard. So in partnerships, there has to be certain rules. Okay, you're going to come here at 7, I'll be here at 7. You're going to leave here at 5, I'm leaving at 5.
Yeah, that way it's shared. And that's, well, you hit the nail on the head though, because when I moved here, we had that problem. Some of us worked more, others worked less, and we kept having conflicts about, I'm working more. It was almost childish. Where are you? Why aren't you coming to work at the same time? All that. So what we ended up doing is we just agreed, here's our hours.
That's the best thing.
Here is our hours.
There's where communication comes.
Yeah, and it fixed everything. Now we don't feel bad because we know, hey, look, if I come in on a Saturday, the agreement was that the weekends are optional. If I come in on a Saturday, it's my choice, and the fact that they don't come in doesn't take away from what they're doing.
That's where I was going to come to that point right there. I was going to come to that point. There may be somebody that is more ambitious than you,
mm-hmm.
but let's say if you guys come to an agreement, let's say there's 3 partners,
mm-hmm.
okay. By the way, on partnerships, there always should be at least 3. So it could be a tiebreaker.
Yeah, vote.
Okay, a tiebreaker or a consensus, because let's say you're over ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
You're younger. You're younger, you got energy. You come to your partners and say, hey, look, man, we're growing. I want to open up an office in Tampa, and I want to move to Tampa. Now, if it's just 2 partners, who's going to break the vote? Unless you come to an agreement, both of you.
Mm-hmm.
And you set the rules. Okay, let's open up an office in Tampa, but you know what? We're not going to spend this amount of money. We're going to do it this way. Let me tell you, it's tough to run a business.
Yeah.
It's very tough. The money is good. And a lot of people, like I said, just don't do it for the money. A lot of people actually, like to build something, because I myself, and I'm not even the owner of this business, but I myself take pride in that Michelle called me in the late 90s selling me a product, and now you guys have, what, how many employees? 20. You even got your conference room, you know, with a sign up. So it's about building something also.
Yeah.
And some people, and this is it, and I learned this, Warren Buffett said this, because I got certain mentors that I look up to. One's Warren Buffett, and another one is Sam Walton, the one that started Walmart. And Sam Walton said something that's true. He goes, I never knew it was going to get this big. He started in a 5 and 10 in Bentonville, Arkansas. A 5 and 10, which is like a dollar store, in the 40s. And he says, I never knew it was going to get this big. So a lot of times you create something and you don't realize how big it could get.
And then it does. You know, like for us, this is the growth of our company is surprising to me, because when you're struggling and you're working all the hours and you're not making any money, you're like, are we ever going to get there, right? And then you get here and you look at it and you're like, how did this happen, right? How was I able to accomplish this? And that's one of the most rewarding feelings in the world, is coming into this office every day. Look, like this morning, I walk down the hallway, I make a left into the office, and I just have a sense of pride, right? We built this, all sweat equity, working our ass off, 14, 16-hour days, making no money. And now we got it to where it's at. But I think there is, like you said, two components to why somebody builds this. It's because they love it, and because it's fun, because it really is fun. But also, another component that is important is the money. Like, we have this conversation. Obviously, happiness is a big part of business, but making money is very important. I mean, would you agree? What's your balance? Like, some people go, I just want to be happy. Others like money.
It depends what you want out of life. Okay, there's people that are happy with the Rolls Royce, and there's people that are happy with the Toyota. Money is not evil. Okay, first let's get that. There's nothing wrong with money, because if you have money, you can buy a brick and I can throw it at your head, or I could buy a brick and build a church, or to feed children, or whatever. So it's what you do with money. But tell you the truth, it's a combination. It's a combination of feeling pride for creating something, and it's also the money. Okay, because money doesn't buy you health, but it buys you good medical care.
Yeah. And
usually if you have money, you're healthier than somebody that doesn't. And you know what they say, health is wealth. You know? Money doesn't buy you happiness, but damn, you feel happy when your car breaks down and you got the money to pay for it. You know, that it's broken. Shit, I think money even gets you love. You know what like listening to this guy's motivational speaker, what's his name? Les Brown. You heard he was born here in Liberty City. He was born here in Liberty City. He goes, well, if you have money, a woman will even find your earlobes pretty on you, whatever. But it's a combination. It's a combination of both things. But then some people say, if you eat lobster every day, it starts tasting like soap.
There you go. I think it depends on what your vision is for your life, but also something that I found recently that I used to do that used to get me depressed is not comparing yourself to other people, right? I used to do that. I used to see where other people were at in life, and I'd be like, well, they're the same age as me. Why are they there and I'm here, right? But then I realized that it's not about what they're doing. It's about comparing myself to my potential, right? To the person I could be. And that's why you see me starting these different things, because
you hit it on the spot. Look. Yep. You could. When I was a kid, I used to read a lot.
Yeah.
Because, well, if you're gonna see me on a video, I'm short. I was always short. I never got picked for a football team or a basketball team. So while my friends were playing sports, I used to read biographies and autobiographies. You can learn from other people. Okay, you can learn from others. It's beautiful. I mean, you want to read the autobiography or the biography of, I've read it, Sam Walton, Warren Buffett, Franklin Roosevelt, Malcolm X, those people, you can read them. But you're on your own journey.
There it is.
You learn about those people, but you're on your own journey. Your own journey is different from everybody else. It's like your company. You could read about other companies and all that, but you don't want to be like Microsoft. You don't. You don't want to be like Apple. You don't, because you're on a different path. So you can learn from them, from what they're doing, and take stuff from them, because everybody copies everybody, But you're on your own path. The way you got to think about this, look, we all have regrets in our life. I have many.
Mm-hmm.
Forget about what happened in the past. Concentrate on the present. Do the best you can. That way you never feel bad that you didn't try the best you can. And a lot of times life is going to put obstacles in front of you. It's not going to go your way. It's not what happens in life. It's how you react to it. It's not what happens in life. I hope this never happens, but let's say one day this whole building burned down.
Yeah.
And everything you had here burned down. You would have to start anew. You would have to react to what happened.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? 90% it's not what about happens to us in life. It's 90% how we react to it, and 10% what happens. But I've never that's been one of my positives. I've never compared me to other people, because when you start comparing yourself to other people, you just get depressed.
Yeah.
And in life, there's a lot of variables too. It's not just about business. It's being about good person.
Mm-hmm.
It's about your company providing something for a customer that's going to be useful. Because think about this. Think about this. Look, this is the point. You're creating a company where it's going to give a solution to a customer that's going to make them more money. Why would they buy it? Why would they buy it? You have to present your product like that, which is true. You're creating something that you're going to give to customers where they're going to be more profitable.
Yeah, it's going to help them.
It's going to help them. So you're creating something of value. That's basically it.
Okay, so I think that's a good segue into my last question. Every time I've had this interview, I ask the participant, what advice, let's say you met somebody that's maybe 20 years old, 21, they're starting to go through the same journey you've been through. What advice would you give to them if they were, for instance, starting at a MAG Wholesale or starting their own MAG Wholesale? Like, what advice would you give somebody starting their own business?
What I would tell somebody is the truth. What I've experienced. My experience may be different than yours. Okay. If you want to start your own business and you want to do it, you go ahead and do it. Do not let nobody tell you, all these haters, because I've had a lot of haters in my life. Because I was one of those kids that got picked on all the time, bullied and all that. If you really believe in something, I'll give you a perfect example. Look at Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
That guy's crazy. People look at that guy and people, I look at Elon Musk and I tell myself, but this guy's insane. He's just reckless. He doesn't believe anything. He does what he wants to do. This guy's created a car company, which to make a car company nowadays, most of them go bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
His is still around. He's making holes under the earth in a boring company. Okay, look at all these guys, what this guy's done. He's setting rockets up in space. He makes solar panels. Basically what I'm telling you, look, if you want to create something, don't let nobody tell you can't do it. You do it. You do it. There's going to be a lot of sacrifices. There's going to be sacrifices in your time. There's going to be sacrifices in your mental health.
Yeah. Because
even Elon Musk gets depressed. There's going to be sacrifices in relationships.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately. First, you got to want it. Bad enough. Where you're willing to sacrifice all these things. You're going to have doubt in yourself.
Yeah.
Even Jeff Bezos says the other day, I was listening to him, and he goes, when I come into this business, I come with a fear factor every day. With fear. Not the fear where he lets the fear overwhelm, but what he's trying to say is he's scared that what may happen. If you fail, you try again. Mm-hmm. It may not be for you. But let me tell you something, and if you read, this is where it comes, where I read a lot of biographies and autobiographies. A lot of people have failed many times before they've been a success. I don't know, but I think Walt Disney, when he started Walt Disney, he went bankrupt like 5 times or whatever. He went bankrupt like 5 times. Jeff Bezos didn't start making money in Amazon until like around 2005. The Chinese guy from Alibaba didn't make money for 10 years. You know what it is to work for 10 years and not make money? And now the guy is the richest man in China, I think. Colonel Sanders started Kentucky Fried Chicken when he was 65. 65! And how many people probably shut the door on him? If you believe in something, really, if you believe in something, you do it. And if you fail, you fail. It's not the end of the world. Failure does not define you. Mm-hmm. It's just an experience in life. Failure doesn't define you. But I just want to get the record straight. There are a lot of sacrifices you have to make. A lot. But if you succeed, the rewards are big. Besides the money part, your dreams come true. That's basically the only thing I can tell you in a nutshell. If you want to do it, do it.
Yeah, and to add on to that story, when I started here with my uncle, right? I started in spite of my mother. Okay, we're sitting around the dinner table. I've told this story before, and she turns to me and goes, in front of my uncle, Mickey, you need to get a job. So I turn to my uncle. He ends up giving me this job. I start January 1st. The agreement was I make no money, but if I succeed, there's a piece of the company at the end for me. So
which is he was generous.
Tremendous.
He was generous because most people would have told you, if you would come to me, I would have said, let's do this. I'm gonna give you a low salary.
There you go.
And then if I notice you're succeeding, then we'll wait a couple of years. But he was generous. But keep on going. And I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Extremely generous.
That was generous.
And I knew the opportunity, but I start working on this and I start failing. And guess who the first person that told me to quit was? My mother. She said, quit that thing. You guys aren't going anywhere. Your uncle's not going to make it. Ignacio's not going to make it. And you're not going to make it. And you're going to fail. And that was the story she would replay over and over and over. And the irony is that it was perpetuated by me telling her that it was hard. By me telling her that I wasn't having any success. I wasn't making any progress. So the irony is I gave her the information to tell me to quit, right? And that's what most people do. They look for somebody to confide in, like their parents, right? And they tell them the problems that they're having. Their parents don't have the experience to tell you how to solve the problem. They just tell you to quit and find something else because it's easier, because it'll make you feel better, because it'll help you avoid the depression and the way that you're feeling. But long story short is, you know what? Fuck this. There's no way I'm going to quit this opportunity, because if it works, it's going to go to infinity. If it fails, I start again and I'm 25 years old. Who cares? Right? Who cares if I fail? Plus, I had failed.
Remember what I told you, failure doesn't define who you are. It's an experience in life that happens. Most parts business people will tell you that you learn more from failure than success. You know that every time, I'll give you a perfect example, every time that the North Koreans shot a rocket and it didn't go anywhere, you know that every time they shot one, they would learn more from that mistake to make it. And what are the North Koreans now? They're shooting rockets that could go basically anywhere.
Yeah.
Because they learned from that mistake.
And they tried again.
And they tried again.
I think we are.
You know, a lot of people are afraid of failure. I used to be like that for a lot of years. Now I'm not even afraid of anything. Yeah, probably even God. Probably I'm afraid of God. But a lot of people are afraid of failure. And sometimes failure is a stumbling block. What's failure? Fear. The unknown. What's fear? The unknown of what you think is going to happen.
And then it never.
Then you would have never left Nevada and been here.
There you go. Yeah. And so to summarize, I mean, what you just said, basically, don't let the haters detract you. Okay. When you fail, try again. And the more you try, and the more you learn from your mistakes, the better you get, and you increase the probability of success in your next endeavor. And like you said, don't be crazy. So don't risk it all. I would summarize it.
Don't risk it all. You know, there's certain people that could risk it. But there's certain people that can't. You take calculated risk.
Risk where the downside isn't very big, but the upside is tremendous.
But you know, look, it's there's companies that take big risk and win big, and they grow a lot faster.
There you go.
Then there's companies that take calculated risk, but they grow steady, but safer.
So the risk that you take can't jeopardize the whole of the operation, right? It needs to be so the way my uncle always puts it, because he's the one that's more conservative than I am, and again, that comes down to the age thing.
Which is good.
It's very good.
It's good
you
because
have to have balance.
A balance.
Otherwise,
balance.
Absolutely, and that's something.
That's why we have Congress. Well, that's another story.
That's another story.
That's another story.
Because they can't agree on anything.
Yeah.
But back to the risk thing. Anytime I come with an idea, he goes, well, how can we utilize, right? Let's say it's recurring revenue, which doesn't take out a chunk of our business. How can we grow the business to a point where the recurring revenue can pay for this risk? And if anything happens here, it doesn't affect our core business. So he's always thinking about a way to make whatever we're doing, whatever risk we're doing, safer. And then me, I'm just like, fuck it, do it. Throw the dice.
I agree with his analysis on that.
Absolutely.
But you gotta understand, he knows that because he's been doing this for a lot more years than you have. He's grown it from one employee or two employees to more. But
well, and also it came from communism, which is important too.
Take risks where it's not going to affect the overall, survival of the company. Where if it doesn't work out, you can fall back, because there's a lot of products that don't work out for a lot of companies, and they have to close it. They say, no, we're not doing that anymore. There's a lot of technology. There's a lot of companies that spend X amount of money in products, and they have to say, we're not getting money off of this. But they have their core business.
Yeah, can't affect the core business.
You have the core. I agree with that assessment.
And I agree, and I think that's a good place to end. I mean, we've covered a vast array of topics. There's going to be a lot of highlights from this podcast. Before we go, I wanted to ask you if there's any potential customers or anyone looking for a distributor like you here in Southern Florida, where can they find you? How can they reach out to you?
Okay, MAG Wholesale Corp.
Mm-hmm.
We're at 190 West 23rd Street, Hialeah, Florida, 33010. You can reach me at 305-888-3100. If you want to speak to me, just mention LaceUp.
Got it.
And I'll take the call. Yeah, I already told you that I get a lot of calls, people trying to sell me everything, so I have to, filter the calls. But just mention LaceUp, and I'll answer your questions. No
Absolutely.
problem. And if I can't answer them, I'll call you after work or whatever. But yes, I will answer your questions. No problem.
Well, Albert, thank you so much. And for the listener, thank you for tuning in to episode 6 of the podcast. We look forward to see you guys next time. Take care.